Hi, Tony. Both of these portraits look very good, proportions-wise, for example. I think that you're particularly proficient with the modified contour line drawing. With the second drawing, I'm looking at the location of the ear, and I'd like you to check that. I think one thing that might be hindering you is the fact that you haven't seen or drawn the back of this boy's head. Even in cases where the head is sunken into a pillow, I'd suggest sketching out the total of it and using that total head shape to ID location for the ear, which to my way of thinking is usually across from the eyebrow and the tip of the nose, right? So it would extend that long. Christina, I like to see the way that you're using the same model apparently for both drawings. The first drawing winds up being sort of a preparatory study for the second. And by the way, your modified contour line drawing does look correct. With the second grayscale portrait, there's a lot that's lovely there. I'm admiring the location and detail of the ear in particular. It's all come together very nicely. I would suggest punctuating the portrait with some more darks. And I'm looking at a crease there at the jawline below the ear and thinking that maybe that line can belong to the edge of a shape of shadow. Hi, Brandon. I see that you're putting your best foot forward here. However, I'm not sure that you've digested all of the information from this week's readings. And when I look at the first drawing, things that tell me that include, for instance, the way the ear is portrayed, I am so sure that you that you are being persuaded by what your mind thinks that ear ought to look like versus what you're actually seeing. Now, the second drawing, as I was just saying to Tony, I'd like you to draw out the shape of the head before positioning the ear. For example, before adding hair, I think you're going to have an easier time locating the neck, for example, and the ear as well. Be sure that the eye is halfway down. Tanji, I would really like to see another version of assignment 2 from you. It seems as though this drawing was made rather quickly, and of course the modified contour line drawing can be done in a short period of time, but if you include more information and avoid fast lines that are just filling in space or approximating texture such as hair, you will really get a handle on this method. Now with your second drawing, I can see how that profile there, the front of the face, is looking very good. I want you to work more on the shape of the head before you locate the features or the ear. The head from forehead to back at its widest point will be wider than what you have. You've got to tell me if I'm not saying your name right. Please send me a note. I'm glad you tried another of these modified contour line drawings. I think that you are getting at what is the core of this method. However, in the second one, I feel as though you're intentionally trying to abstract rather than letting it happen by chance. Now, with your second drawing, I love this profile of this small child, and perhaps you noticed that I put several photos and images of small children in the drafts review for this assignment. This is actually a hard pose with the head turned. If I were doing this, I would want to show the neckline because I think that's key to helping people understand the neck turned in such a way. Also, I would diminish the detail in the teeth. In other words, not number them, and maybe check the location of the ear and try to get the entire head, the back of the head, onto the page. Hi Camille, this is a beautiful drawing. You know, it appears that the top of the subject's head is tipped toward us, which is creating an effect of foreshortening, making this a harder pose for you to draw. However, I do feel like it has a sense of being anatomically correct. What it could use is more variety and value and some sort of language for the hair. Teresa, both of these are very beautiful. One thing I want to encourage you to do, particularly with this sort of drawing in the second assignment, is be sure to sketch out the entire head. Now, it might be that you want the head to be cropped, in which case I would say add a second sheet of paper temporarily. But please start by drawing the entire shape of the head, and that will help you to locate the ear, which here looks a little high, the neck, and so on. Because with drawing a portrait, you are drawing the head, not just the visage, not just the face. Now, with the first drawing, this is not the technique that's being asked for, and for credit, I would like you to make another drawing. Take a look at the Giraffes Review and see the short video that I link you to. Lisa, this is an outstanding batch of work, and I can see how you are growing in your skills at observing the subject before you. You have the modified contour line drawing technique. In the second drawing, I wonder whether you may have seen a note I made to one of your peers about a neckline. I think that detailing the neckline means all the world when we're trying to describe how the neck attaches or sits on the shoulder. One thing here in the second drawing is I notice you are exaggerating edges. If you would like to do so, I suggest perhaps putting a dark background in. Make sure that a line is standing for the edge of a shape of value, no darker than the line itself. Jason, I think you've done some good work with the modified contour line drawings. I would encourage you and others to continue working at this method. You know, in your final one, I see a combination of the sort of result we're looking for, but also some stylization too. Let go of what your mind is telling you things ought to look like. Now, the second drawing, this is actually quite lovely, except perhaps the eye needs some work. Here I've included a couple of images from eyes from the Giraffes Review. Christina, this is really a very lovely profile view with a modified contour line drawing method, and perhaps you have shaded in the area of the mustache and beard, but I think that's forgivable, although I'd avoid adding value for future attempts with this method. I can see looking at the ear that you are getting what we need to get out of this. It does appear that you've used either a thick marker or a small page. Remember, in this particular assignment, we wanted a large page and a fine point marker. Lisa, you know, with a modified contour line drawing and a profile view, I can usually look at the ear and see whether people are getting the method, and I think that you are experiencing this sort of acute awareness and ability to record what you see here. Some areas are still stylized. We looked at the hair, for example. Try to draw every contour you put down as a record of one particular edge that you see. So you might like to do more of these. Now, I think I may owe you an apology. Perhaps I did not review your work in a Giraffes Review with this second drawing, and this is really lovely. A beautiful portrait. I like the way you've become involved with the hair. One thing to note is that the eye is not halfway down the head, it appears. That would be halfway down from the top of the skull. And just one more matter, I want you to check the width of the head at its widest point. That would be from about the brow and then straight back horizontally to the back of the head. I think you've made this perhaps a little too short. Denise's drawing is really coming along. I can see looking at these contour line drawings between the two of them that you have the method. The proportion and positioning of the second portrait is just really lovely. I am so enamored of the way you've arranged this. If I had to give any criticism, maybe the width of the head from the forehead straight back could be a tad wider. And then I would encourage you to work more so in value, relying less on line. Please exhibit expert photography to the rest of the class. I know you're a photographer and these images are dark. Melissa, you are on the right track with your contour line drawings. It wouldn't be a bad idea to make more of these. Now, with the second drawing, the proportions are looking quite fine. Notice that the neck is usually going to slope back in the direction of the back. I'd like you to check that for future, perhaps include a neckline. And then last of all, make sure that any edges are the edges of shapes of shadow and not lines.